into working as a landless laborers, and for ages they become kind of bonded laborer in the lands of high caste landlords. And if they sometimes they need some money, right? And if they cannot repay those money, they become like they have to continue to work with them as bonded laborers for ages throughout their different generations. And in this story, he was working as agriculture harvester for caste Hindu landlord, and most of the land laborers and the people who are working at low class, they tend to get into alcoholism and other habits because of this stress, and due to that there is a lot of domestic violence and a lot of problems in their personal lives. Conservancy workers. So as India modernized, in urban areas we have this sewage system, huge sewage system. Again, it is not perfectly modernized. And in Mumbai, there are around 35,000 sewage workers. 98% of them are around 30,000 conservancy workers. Majority of them are from Dalit community or the untouchable caste. So, and their longevity is almost 30 to 45 years. That is theirs. And most of them die inside these gutters when they clean all these sewages. So this is happening in city like Mumbai. So the big cities have also, so the forms of untouchability is changing as we modernize. So on different parameters, access to resources, there is strong discrimination in terms of differential wage rate between high caste and low caste, irrigation facilities, access to cooperatives, and because in rural area there are different forms of resource gathering, social capital formation, and they are discriminated in those parameters. And this is a picture in a typical school. The government has this scheme where they encourage children to come to schools and they give a meal in the afternoon. And here the teacher will check who is from high caste and who is from low caste. If they find somebody sitting there trying to eat, and the person is from, the child is from low caste, they will ask him to just sit at different place. So there is segregation in the schools. And also government introduced a scheme where the cook should be from the low caste. There is kind of affirmative policy for social harmony or integration. And the children denied to eat in those schools if they find that there are cooks who are from low caste communities. So this is a scenario in the public schools. And most of the young generation, because of lack of education and lack of access to improvement in their own life, they continue their traditional job. So the young generation, the young kids get into their parents' occupation. Although and there is also a trend of early marriages. And as we see the history, there has been a lot of efforts to eradicate caste, as Siddharth has pointed out. But the predominant was, the contribution was by Dr. Ambedkar. And in 1932, as he was discussing his conflict with Gandhi, because Gandhi, when Dr. Ambedkar won the battle with the Britishers to implement the affirmative policy, Gandhi, when he came back to India, from the Round Table Conference, he went on hunger fast till death, opposing those policies for the untouchable, saying that the high caste should change their minds. And that time, with all the pressure, he had to withdraw those policies. And however, he said that time that he is born as Hindu but will not die as Hindu. So till 1956, he discussed different religions, thought, pondered over it, and in 1956, before his death, he converted to Buddhism. And the broad difference between Gandhi and Ambedkar is the philosophical difference is Gandhi says that we need to keep our villages intact, go back to villages where the caste is very powerful instrument. So each caste has their role. However, Dr. Ambedkar says go to cities because in rural areas there is more atrocities, more violence against and there is no scope for development. And so there is, but till now, most of the policies are framed for urban-centric development. However, recently the government of India introduced a village panchayat system, but there is always dilemma what one should follow. And in the end, I'll just read Dr. Ambedkar's last quote. It was very powerful. My final word of advice to you is he was talking to his people because he was frustrated with all in his personal life, fighting for all these struggles from grassroots to policy level. And although he became the first law minister of India, but he resignated from as the first law minister of India when he was trying to pass a legislation for equal treatment of male and female, but it could not pass, so he resignated. And he gave this mantra of educate, agitate and organize and have faith in yourself, and with justice on our side, I do not see how we can lose our battle. So, and this battle is not for wealth or power, but the battle is for the freedom. And the battle is for the reclamation of human personality. Thank you so much.
So for those of you who are willing to ask questions, I think we are here. I go all the way from Milwaukee, so I can take a few more questions.
So, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that at the end of his life, Gandhi converted to Buddhism.
Ambedkar.
Okay. I suppose my question is, among, and maybe this is a stupid question, so please forgive me, but among, I don't know, educated Indians such as yourselves that are either inside of India or in the diaspora outside of the country, what percentage of them, or how much of them believe in the caste system, think it should be maintained? How many of them see this as an injustice and think it should be abolished? What is among Indians that are educated or worldly, what are their opinions?
If you see this recent research, you can see if it is being practiced, the caste has become psychic. It went into mind because of the religion. And because of religion, you are somebody. So it is difficult for Indians to say, I am not this Brahmin. The moment you say he is from this caste, you believe in the caste order, right? And that's how, and at the time of marriage, at the time of job, at the time of making friends, at the time of renting your house in Mumbai, renting your house, the first question they will ask your caste. So it is very...
In a nutshell, the answer is every single Indian believes in caste system. Unless you are outside, like pretty much we are opposing against it. But that's the very reason why I showed that movie that I showed, showing that most Indians, when you ask them, where is caste system? You as outsiders, you said you have your professors, go talk to them and say, where is caste system? They will say two things. Caste system is in those villages which have not even seen the light of a bulb. Edison has not done that. I'm from GE, so I have to plug that in there. Then the other thing they say is, the one is it's in the rural areas. It's way away from us. And then they will say it is way away from our time. You're talking caste. You're talking pre-independence. Which is the very reason why I showed you that video that I showed. It's AIMS, All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And I wanted to move this along, but immediately after where I stopped, a professor steps in and says, yeah, it happens. And so I didn't show you that. The other thing which you need to ask is, who do these people marry? Untouchability has changed now. Earlier it was as Lalit pointed out, you couldn't walk through a street. You still can't walk through a street in village, but if you go to a city, it's hard for you to tell. So the only thing you need to realize is untouchability has changed its parameters. Now it's not physical untouchability, but when you come to me for a job, I'll check with you and I'll find out. There was a study done by an American university with a proper empirical formula saying that they went to India, they pulled out a report of all the job advertisement, and for each job, they sent 3 applications. Names can tell a lot about these people. So they used a clear name which said, this person is a Brahmin, send that application out. This person is a Muslim or a Christian, send that application out. And they specifically sent an application which said, this person is an untouchable. So the name could be Siddhartha Harijan. Harijan is a name, like Dalit, Harijan, untouchables, scheduled caste is all the same thing, it says untouchable. And they realized that there were 40% less calls made back when the application went with a name which said it's untouchable. And these jobs were not Indian companies. They went across the board. They probably even verified GE India, they verified Microsoft India, they verified Apple India. Because the people sitting there pick the name and say, So it's all over the place. Caste system is there.
How many what?
How many students do you see there?
Bless you.
There's more than 1 million students on the campus, and most of them are from higher upper caste. And that proves that it's not only like people back then in the villages, grown up, educated upper caste students believe that this topic should not be pondered upon, especially in this country, because they kind of look down upon it. Like, we do not want to be known as the people who are practicing these things, but we still go ahead and practice these, but we don't want people outside of India to know about it, kind of thing.
It seems to be very analogous to, in one way you could say it's analogous to Western countries in that people like to talk about the elimination of sexism and racism, and yet they are still very much in the way society works. And the thing that it made me think, and this is maybe ridiculous, but if you were looking at Earth from the outside, you could kind of say we have castes in terms of continents. We've got rich continents and we've got poor continents, and the rich continents don't seem to.
But the question is, can the rich continents become poor and the poor continents become rich over a period of time? The answer is yes.
The largest number of billionaires are Indian. If you
But to the question, but when you look at caste system, you can't change. Well, Europe was rich, now America is so rich. Europe is in recession. Pretty soon China is going to be high up there. People don't talk, but Ram yesterday said South America is coming up, Brazil and everything. So when you look from outside, the point here is mobility. It's not just rich and poor, because rich and poor, if it was just rich and poor, the money changes hands. But it is a social status which is stamped on you by birth.
Is there any kind of, this might be a ridiculous question, is there any kind of a physical thing other than just one's name that people can like people did in another
Let me see if I'll answer that question, but I also want to give people what were your questions.
Well, this kind of ties into his question. Can you lie about your caste? Like, you go to a big city and you say, yeah, I'm a Shatra, and you're really not. And I don't think it's pretty caught in line.
If you see, Indian community is very close network community. Even if you lie, and if you live in some pot, get some house in some good locality, and you are also from like class 1 good officer, and if you get some your relatives, friends coming at your home, slowly, even if you see, just an example, anybody in America from India, when they want to get married, there is about arranged marriage system. So they will explore everything before actual marriage takes place. So it is long process. So they explore who is their relative, who is. So although, but there are a lot of last names from where you can identify. But from physical structure, it's very difficult to identify who is from which caste. But that is not the beauty, but that you can say how it survived over the years. Although now you cannot identify, like the blacks in America, you can immediately identify from hair or other features. although you cannot identify individuals based on the features, but still it is surviving for 3,000 years. So there is some system in place which is operating.
The concept is the same, I'm going to explain, but I love using analogies. For this question, the analogy I use is, you all come through middle school, right? You've not just dropped into this college one fine day, right? In middle school, when I am a brown guy, I go into my suburban middle school, all I see is a group of white kids, right? White kids with biceps, red hair, black hair, freckles and everything. But do the kids know who they are? Do the football players know who they are? For me, they all look white. Do the arts people, those who do theater and things, do they know who they are? Do the people who are geeks know who they are? So when you look at an Indian community, look at it as a middle school. These people have grown together from forever. Their parents have grown together from forever. So when you, at the moment if I don't know what caste you are, I will know by the way of association. Even if a new kid comes. So in the same way, if you are from a middle school, if you go to a different middle school, if you are a person who is interested in arts or whatever, you go and group up with those people. If you are a football player, if you are a sports guy, you go and group up with the people. If you were not one of them, but you go to a different one and try to pose, you can pose for only so long. When you go to the football field or somewhere, you got to show your skill. You got to show who you know. At that point, it will be clear that you have actually lied to us. You said you were a football player, but you can't punt, you can't throw. Maybe you can even do all that, but when the parent-teacher association meeting comes, you'll come with your parents. And guess what? Your parents don't look like football players. They don't speak that language. So Indian society is like a middle school. It takes one trip to the cafeteria to know what kids say and who you dated.
A lot of questions they will ask.
And so do people even try that? Do people
Yes.
Okay, they do try
They try it not blatantly, they just don't tell it. I have a story where a guy from Delhi, an untouchable, went to Mumbai, set up a shop over there, like one of those chaat shops, you probably know. It's just an Indian fast food street vendor. So he was doing great, but he's an untouchable from Delhi. One fine day, somehow a villager from that Delhi came down walking from Mumbai, looked at this guy and said, "Oh my God, you're here. We thought you left or whatever, we made friends." But while walking up and down the street, he actually mentioned to the other vendors that this guy is actually an untouchable guy from Delhi. He had to close shop and go back because then, once they knew it, nobody would go do business with him. So there are multiple ways. You can lie, which is really, really, people don't do that because they know the consequences. More often than not, people just don't tell and try to go along until people put them on the spot and say, "Tell me your caste or you're not walking through." And then they have to. Question? Yes?
Harlan kind of gave an example of it, but do you find that discriminatory things that happen in India in different countries, within between India and India here in America?
Yes, in 2007, there was one case in Chicago. The boy was from low caste and the girl was from high caste. They got married and for a long time the parents of girls were unhappy somehow, but they stayed together, the girl and boy. And one day this father of the girl came and they put gas around the house and burned the house. The girl was pregnant and the boy was this. So three of them literally got burned in America. And there are a lot of cases of, especially where you have a lot of some population of untouchable caste, and when they interact with the high caste, especially in New York where there is some or California where there is population. And also the caste went into other religion, Christianity, Islam and other religions. So you have a large number of migrants who are from Sikh community and you have their separate temples from the untouchable caste. So that they cannot go to other temples. So there are some examples where you see, and even in terms of marriages, they have caste association and they will not. Even you will see the advertisements, if you just put Indian matrimonial, they will ask and they are living in America, they will ask SC/ST or the Dalits, please excuse. If you just type SC/ST excuse, you will find 100 millions of search. So they will specifically mention do not respond. Although they will say caste no bar, means they are fine with all the caste, but no untouchable.
Let me also bring some framework around this. Caste, singular, doesn't exist. You need to have a group of castes. If you are just a caste, then you are one. You need castes so you can juggle them and put them one on top of the other. For that to happen, you need to have enough critical mass. Only now with the software boom or something and education being opened up and more travel, India, the world becoming a smaller and smaller, there are more people like untouchables and lower castes coming here. So there are examples already, but they will become more and more evident as we go in. I'm an untouchable. I have high aspirations, so I'll move across my company. I'll try to move across outside public systems or wherever. I'm gonna get there. But when I go through that, the first person who that group of people put in front of me is an Indian because he's already there. Hey, this Indian is here. He wants to move up the ranks. Can you vet him for us? And if that Indian knows that I'm from an untouchable, there's my roadblock. To the effect that Harvin is the only person who ever has got this set up for me. When I call up universities and say, hey, I can come speak to you about caste system and text media and everything, if the professor or the group says, oh, sure, please talk to our Indian organization, hang up.
Our Indian student organization did not touch it either. I asked twice. And I will make an announcement, sorry. It's over 8 days if some of you, whoever wants to leave, you guys can go. And if you have questions, you guys can stay. We are open for discussion until whenever you guys want to stay here. It's okay. But if someone has to leave.
So, as the mass of people increases, there will be discrimination. So I'm just waiting for it. I am going to run into it.
But in UK they have a research now, and UK government passed legislation on caste as equal to race because there is a lot of cases in schools, in public school and government schools, where they find there is a lot of singular segregation with the untouchable, so-called.
Because the volume of people there is huge. Britishers ruled us, we were there. Yes, let me take that question.
I'd just be interested, thank you both for being here and sharing with us. This is so insightful and important to hear. What do we do? What do you do? What do Indians and other persons who are concerned about those who fall into this untouchability? Is there a solution, or is this an insurmountable and continual social will that's going to affect humanity?
Every individual can play a significant role, and in India there are different ways, like affirmative action policies and a lot of programs where Dr. Ambedkar wrote a very classic article on annihilation of caste, and he wrote all different avenues, intercaste marriages and all the different things, how we can resolve this issue. And he finally says there is only one solution, is to destroy the scriptural validity which sanctify the caste. So there is no other solution. That's why he converted into Buddhism, because everything is really. But in Western Hemisphere, like in America and other countries, I see a lot of universities have South Asian research or Indian studies research, and I have been to a lot of places. They do research on Taj Mahal and sitar and music and all this stuff, or post-colonial stuff. Everything they blame on colonial. So there is post-colonial research or music or art or in sculpture and others. But they never talk about this issue of 300 million population, which is suffering from ages. So I think in America, there should be, I think, a lot of awareness about the issues. People don't know about Gandhi. People are, and also US government passed a resolution on abolition of untouchability, and whenever the trade become India, they will push for the equal treatment and implementation of policies. So there are a lot of things which people can do who are enlightened and educated about these issues.
For Indians, us though, while we are seeking what we are doing here is trying to educate as many outsiders as possible and see if we can get a favorable opinion. But the real struggle is in India. Indians need to do a few things, and Dr. Ambedkar has shown them as part of his life. And I think we may have to go backwards, because as he grew wiser, he knew the better solutions. An effective and immediate solution is religion. Untouchables are untouchables because they are in the Hindu religion. Hindu religion is the only one which puts down into your caste and everything. People who have converted into Islam, Sikh religion, or Christianity have fared a little better. And if untouchables from Hindu religion, or also all other untouchables across the country, do realize their solution in Buddhism, and the reason it actually came to provide a better social life, Buddha's philosophy was never to find a spiritual end. He also found social solutions. So the first solution people can do as we learn more about Dr. Ambedkar's life is to become Buddhists. That will immediately throw them off the shackles of Hindu religion. Then you can ask me, who are you? And I can say, I'm a Buddhist. End of story. They're not so easy. I'm not saying it's so easy because there are people who you can still classify as Buddhists and still know that they are untouchables. Because just because you become a Buddhist only gives you spiritual strength. You still have the issues of economy, social and political issues. So people who still convert to Buddhism want to keep that status of scheduled caste or untouchable with them for the purpose of the reservations which help them get into colleges, education, political power and everything. But if the basis is that we are all Buddhists and then they pick this up, then they might have a better chance of questioning their discrimination. But if they stay Hindu and take advantage of education, take advantage of politics or whatever, once you step out of that office or whatever at 5 o'clock, sure you are the member of parliament till 5 o'clock, but once you stepped out, you're untouchable on the street. So Buddhism, then along with it taking advantage of the affirmative policies put in there, and really bonding together as untouchables and not you are this kind of untouchable, I am this kind of untouchable, I at least get better treated than you, so I am okay with it, I won't mix with you. So there is a lot of unity that is needed to begin with. So there is a solution. That's the reason I think we get that energy to go on here, rather than just leaving it that, well, at least we got out of India, we are fine. We do see a solution.
There shouldn't be complement in the American government to make these reservations in the political field or when it comes to med schools and dental schools, because I know that, you know, the lower caste have these reserved seats for the lower caste students. And I know for someone like me, being from, you know, a Sikh religion, upper caste, it would be 10 times harder for me to get into med school or dental school back in India just because I don't have the reservation and I'll have to fight for it till I die to get into that school.
You can start by complimenting Dr. Ambedkar, and compliments needs to stop there. That's it. The reason they have been going on is because each caste has some level of political clout, so they can't take this down. Indian government time and again has tried to take this down. Why do you need reservation? Because when Dr. Ambedkar put reservations, he did not put them indefinitely. He put them to achieve a particular purpose, and he said when it's done, and in his mind it was just a few decades, a couple of decades. We are 6 decades past and we are still in the stage, which is the reason why when current governments, there are a lot of intermediary governments, intermediary caste governments who still fight for this, is because they want to show that we are still keeping them, so vote for them. They are not those thinkers who are thinking complementary or complete picture and saying reservations are great for the lower depressed classes. No, they are saying that if in my rule reservations go down, my folks won't vote for me. So you can compliment Dr. Ambedkar and see what the necessity is, why these are still alive.
I think reservation, like they are temples. They are 100% reserved for Brahmins.
Yeah.
So there are landlords, huge landlords, thousands of acres of land. It is reserved for certain communities. So when it comes to education, there is social inequality in our, we don't exist as an independent individual without property of our parents, we don't look as marriage as free autonomy for ourselves. So when it comes to maintaining caste order, so the social capital and the resources are still with the few castes, which is 15 to 16% of the population, and majority. So when there is no reservation or affirmative action policy, 100% of these seats will be with 15% of. If you see the private education institution in India, there is no reservation. Almost 99% of those are with the 15% of population. So even if there is no policy in place, so informally it works. So this is, and politically it was, political affirmative action policy was for 10 years, which is increasing. However, there was no deadline for educational or public sector employment opportunity. The deadline is when society gets equal. And until now, there is no reservation in private sector, there is no reservation in judiciary, there is no reservation in defense services, and a lot of fields where there is hardly any provision, even after 50 years.
And judiciary, you have about 28 Supreme Court judges. There was one Dalit who was picked in 2006. I'm pretty sure he was picked towards the end of his retirement age, so he probably already is gone, so now there is no Dalit. So 15% of people don't have a single judge in the Supreme Court. And what we need to do is, in America here, you especially will hear this reservation thing. I have seen protests in Washington or whatever, where Indian students, upper caste, will go about with a stake saying that reservations are bad, we don't need it, support merit.
Yeah.
That's what they go about with. When reservation-related issues come up in India, students here, upper caste Indian students here, go about and support eliminating of reservations, and they say go by merit. But what we need to realize is that, have you ever seen a track, a 400-meter track? When you run a 400 track, the guy on the outside can't stand in line with you. He has a handicap. He needs to be given that 50 meters or 25 meters extra, and he will still run the 400 meters. It's the same case that you need to think of when you are thinking about reservations in India. The guy, untouchable, is outside the village. He's not even in the village, and the village has the school. He's already wasting his time. If he can come to the school, walking 6 miles in and walking back. And on some roads, he's not allowed. And that video which I have shown, India Untouched, it shows where Dalits are not allowed vehicle, like bus entry or whatever. So the kid is pretty much walking to school, and he doesn't get the midday meal and everything. So what is this kid? If you compare to that athletics program, that 400-meter run, he's not only outside the track, he's outside the stadium. So you need to give him some help. So that is why reservation has come in picture, but people say that reservation is there just so...
Because that's how it's portrayed. For someone like me, it's always been portrayed to me like it's a bad thing, it should be taken out because I can't get into a school that I want to because of these reservations.
What?
And it does sound unfair when I look at it.
Yes.
But when I look at it from your perspective, it's much more fair, and I feel that this is how it should be, because otherwise you would never be,
it's the issue.
committed to these schools.
Dr. Ambedkar, the greatest contribution of Dr. Ambedkar for India, there was a dilemma to follow Marx or Buddha. There is classic article, Marx or Buddha. So there was Marxist movement coming up in India, and he was of the opinion that there should be democratic revolution in India, but without bloodshed. Even in India right now, if you see, the majority of population is going through all these problems, but there is no violent struggle. So people followed his ideas, that he said that we need to follow the democratic means. Although you have been discriminated, indignified, every day abused, but people are still keeping patience. I don't know anything will happen. He said if the constitution will not work, he will be the first person to burn that constitution, which he put like 7-8 years to make that constitution, because something should work. And so these policies does not help in big way, but the democracy or Indian nation as such is nothing like before during Britishers we wanted representation of Indians, right? But who are these Indians? Are they Indians representing every community, or there are only 10-15% of the population. So if it is not for this untouchable or the majority of the population, then they will sometime revolt against the system, and it will be very dangerous. So these are, I think, representative politics is a way to make people feel that they are also part of this country.
And actually, to his point, those very upper castes who now say that this reservation is not needed, they were the ones who requested for it when the Britishers were ruling. When the Britishers were ruling and there were civil services posts, they protested against the British government saying, only white people are there in all those roles. We need some representation too, and they got in. So when it worked for them then why wouldn't you look at it now and say,
So
okay.
for untouchable, it is still like colony of somebody else. So it is not, they are not free. So
But
it
don't
is
you
big.
think if it was, I realize it
Go ahead.
should stay there the way it is because it's only helpful at this point. But if it was taken away, wouldn't it make the untouchables feel more like, oh, that they're not given a special class in the system where only they can get in just because they're not given equal rights? So don't you think taking away the reservation system will make it equal for
It will
everyone?
make things more dangerous for India. When we talk about India as a homogeneous country, when you see the unrest will increase, and this middle class which is emerging from the Dalits because of this reservation, it is very essential for any community to feel their representation in democratic life of any country. And if you just totally disconnect it, there is danger of like Naxalite movement among Dalits. The Naxalite violence, the left violence is very much there among the tribals, which will come very much there among Dalits. That is threat to democracy. So,
You can take away a reservation and you will get resistance to doing that. Before proving that either the ground has been leveled, or before you can prove that the proper percentage of people are there, I'm sure there won't be like 10% these people, 50% these, 40%, some level of representation. So, so far we've never seen anybody trying to equal that social level playing field, but if you just take the reservations out. Reservation itself is a band-aid. You gotta fix something else. It is going to help by putting these people in their legal system, in the executive bodies in there, to make sure that when policies are made, when executives do their work, everybody's getting a fair share because everyone is there to think about it. If there are two Brahmins, one this guy, and they can see and say, okay, it's good for everybody. Then let it require. But if you have only one group of people there, you never expect it. Yes?
I'm sorry.